You are watching the Life Health Television Network.
Hello, I'm Catherine Meldrum. Welcome to Asset Preservation Strategies. Our topic today is the 80-20 estate plan from A to Z in 60 days. The process of working with a client and advisors to close an estate planning case can often take months. Is there a method to expedite this process, perhaps to as little as 60 days? Our guest has developed a system that'll do just that. It is a pleasure to welcome our guest, Mr. Al Gibbons, President of AEG Financial, King of Prussia, Pennsylvania. Al, welcome to our show.
Catherine, pleasure to be here with you.
Define the 80-20 estate plan.
Catherine, I believe that in estate planning, 80% of the plan can be done in 20% of the time. And I believe it can be done in a 60-day time frame.
I find that absolutely amazing. As someone who's had a lot of years doing estate planning cases, 60 days to complete a case.
Yes.
From A to Z.
Yes. It really depends on the expectations, so let me define what I mean by complete. I'm never sure that we can do 100% of the planning, even if we tried to today. That we'd have to know some things that are actually unknown. When the client's going to die, what the investment market is at the time, and so forth. So I believe in order to be successful in doing the estate planning, we have to manage and define the expectations of the client. And I think that we can get by doing 80% of the plan, and the client will spend the final 20%, that incremental 20%, over the rest of his life. So if we can focus on 80%, if we can focus on 2 or 3 strategies, I think we can get through the process very effectively.
That's an excellent point. In fact, estate planning in itself is a process, and it's something that I don't think anyone can ever totally be assured of. But even 80% in 60 days is still a very impressive feat.
I think that we have to have a target date of when we want to complete the planning process. Often we have to start with the end in mind. Do we take this process for 6 months, do we take it for 9 months, or do we wrap it up in 60 days? I've never really had a client say to me that he'd like to take 2 years to finish his estate plan. So I think that most of us want to move on, yes. And if we can come together and do that, then I think we have a good chance. When you get the advisors together and everybody knows his role, and the client can sign off on that, for example, to make sure that we have the balance sheet, to make sure we have the income statement, to make sure that we have a summary of the legal documents and the plan that's in effect, to make sure that we have the insurance policies and we know the ownership and beneficiary designations. I think when those things come together, yes, we can move forward to a target date and we can move quickly. There will be some inevitable delays, but when a client directs the process, most of the clients that I work with have been very successful in life, or they are currently very successful. They really don't want to spend a huge amount of time in the process. So if the client will say, I want a summary of the legal, I want to know what the programs are, I want to know what the recommendations are, as soon as the client says, I want this done in 60 days.
Then that certainly gives motivation and impetus for the advisors to perform.
You know, we always have this issue in estate planning. Who's going to quarterback this thing?
That's an interesting question. In fact, that's within my interview with you, is who is going to do that. But let's get back to who does the soft fact-finding. Could we assume, Al, that a lot of this has been done at the time you're entering the case? Or do you actually spend the time with the client going through the objectives?
I think some of the soft facts have been done. It's easy to get a balance sheet together and the assets and liabilities. There is one of the advisors who's bringing the client to the table who really knows some of the soft facts. The question is, if I'm not the advisor, how much can I depend on the other advisor to really ask the questions or know the soft facts when that presentation comes together, when the meeting with the client comes together? I would never take that for granted. I will ask some questions. Just to test that the client is in fact in agreement with the facts that have been brought forward. And that's always going to happen anyway.
Who analyzes the hard data? Is that something, again, that someone else has done by the time you're entering the case? Do you go through the wills and the trusts, or the legal documents, the buy-sell agreements, the prenuptial agreements? Obviously, you probably analyze the insurance policies.
Right. I would not want to practice law, and I really don't want to review the documents, but I would like to understand what the documents say.
Which is exactly the intent of the question.
That's right, and I would like to see a summary. I would like to see a summary of how the assets flow in front of the client so that he can say, yes, that's right, or that's wrong. So I would like to hear each person sort of explain the facts in his area. On the balance sheet, it would seem to me often the accountant is going to run through some of that. On the insurance side, I may very well do that. On the legal side, the attorney is going to do that. The advisors may very well get together to discuss the facts of this case and to brainstorm. I was involved in a case recently where we had some significant issues that were being addressed, and we had a client who really could not tolerate or would not tolerate a great deal of complexity. So we really had to think about some issues and sort of go through them. At that time we were together, the client wasn't there, and would have been unhappy had he been there because it was a very technical conversation. But in the end, the advisors were able to come down to 2 or 3 strategies that we thought might effectively execute the plan that the client wanted. And then we were ready to meet with the client. Then we were ready to have some things in writing, some summaries. Then we were ready to put it together.
Who sets the target date? Do you establish that up front, that you want this to be done in 60 days?
Well, it's not really my issue. I mean, while I would like to have it done in 60 days, it's really the client's issue. And I'll ask the client, I'll ask in front of the other advisors, if we're there together, when would we like this process completed? Now, I have to tell you that when I do this at the end of the year, or, you know, I can give you an example here. I was working on a case and got called in after Thanksgiving, and I said to the client, what would make you happy? When would you like to have this done? When would you like to have it out of the way so you can go on with your life?
Good question.
The guy said by the end of the year.
That's a good question.
I said, I don't know if I can do it that fast, because now we have some issues. Now the pressure is back on the advisors to perform and get it done. I'm looking for the big problems, and I'm looking for the most effective way to handle it today. I also do some estate planning in a little bit younger arena, and you know how difficult it is when you're dealing with 50-year-olds or early 60s, that this is young to lock in forever. So the strategies for my clients have to remain somewhat flexible, at least to the best of our ability to make them such.
When a client is brought to you, as you just suggested, let's say an advisor calls you, are you a front room type of professional or a back room type of professional? Do you like to meet and really interface with the client, or are you perfectly content just to sit in the background and do the insurance work?
I will not be in the background. So I won't do it unless I can be with the client. On the other hand, I will subdue my desire to control the process if someone else is doing a very good job on it. So I have no problem accepting my role in the process, but I won't do it from a distance. Yeah, I don't have to be the quarterback, but I won't do it from a distance, because at that point I can't hear what my client is really trying to achieve, and I can't rely on someone else to really articulate the client's wishes.
Have you ever been brought into situations, Al, where you may have been recommended by another advisor and the client has an existing insurance person, perhaps less credentialed, that they've worked with? How have you handled that?
We've all had those sensitive situations. Probably not as sensitive for me, Catherine, as it is for the advisor who calls me in to try to serve his client. He knows there may be some additional expertise needed, and so he places the call to me. And he's wondering how the client's going to feel about that, and there are some other relationships. What I will tell the client is I'm not there to really disturb any existing relationship. But he may need my expertise in this particular area.
Al, you also, in the material you sent me, you referenced 2 major reasons, in your opinion, why people don't implement estate planning. Share those reasons with our audience.
First of all, I think that they feel that they need to have an estate plan that is 100%. It's perfect.
Will it ever be?
It's carved in stone. And that doesn't happen. And there's a lot of frustration on the part of the client when he's trying to get to there, and there is no way to do that. Secondly, so the first is being carved in stone. Secondly, the complexity the advisors communicating what they're trying to
Very
do
key point.
is
Especially in the more advanced cases.
very difficult.
Yes.
And I was on an estate planning panel recently, and as we did a case study, Catherine, it got very complex, and the case study was a 52-year-old entrepreneur. There was no way that a 52-year-old entrepreneur was going to put up with that kind of complexity. Somebody once told me the bigger the client, the more white space you need on a piece of paper. I also think, by the way, that while you may have one sheet with the recommendations, there may be piles in your briefcase.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think that you can take the client to the level of complexity that he wants to go to.
Al, your process is very interesting. It's fascinating, as a matter of fact, and I know our viewers were very pleased to learn how a professional in our business has been able to expedite that process. I want to thank you for joining us on the show. It's been a pleasure having you. I want to thank our viewers very much for watching, and we'll see you on the next program.